CEP, TIO, LE, GA. Hello everyone, I'm Khushbu Nathalia and you watching Conceptual Legal. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Ritesh Anand. Sir has been associated with topmost tier 1 corporate law firms in India, and as a corporate attorney, his practice covers regularly advising and structuring both domestic and cross-border private equity transactions, joint ventures, corporate restructurings, etc., where his scope of work includes drafting, negotiating, and finalizing term sheets, agreements, transaction documents, ancillary agreements, assisting on pre-closing and post-closing obligations, due diligence, and related regulatory corporate compliance. In addition to his general corporate and commercial profile, he have extensive experience in various infrastructures and renewable energy projects in the railway, healthcare, PNG, airport, highways, solar power, wind power, and mining sectors, and have drafted and advised on concession agreements, EPC documents, PPAs, bid documents, O&M contracts, and advisory on projects, development issues, and dispute. So we are very honored to have you with us today. I would please like you to share your experience with our viewers.
Thanks, Kushbu, and thank you everyone who's joined us here on the Sunday afternoon. I hope everybody's having a good day. And first of all, I understand there are a lot of law school students here, and there might be a few queries with respect to corporate law and what exactly they want to do with their future going forward into firms, or whether it be independent practice in a chamber, or whether it be in-house. So preliminarily, I really want to first get some fundamental issues clarified over here, because a lot of people, even in their fourth and fifth year, don't really know how the system works or the legal market works. Primarily, first of all, I would like you to, first of all, I want you to understand that the legal market is now a professional full service industry, and it's treated more as a business which is institutionalized rather than what it used to be, which was a professional practice or an art. So what it is essentially it's housing. It goes hand in hand with demand supply economics and how the general economy goes out. Plays out. For instance, there are, your conglomerates, your corporate houses, etc. Whatever, whenever they enter into a transaction or a dispute, there is a niche for legal services which they actually require, and to cover that, they go to law firms. So when they go to law firms, a law firm typically, we are tier 1 law firms, so to say. I'm not going to be naming any, but what their broad practice areas always entail are to service every single one of a corporate's wide spectrum of problems across a myriad of legal and business related issues. So essentially, even like the perfect example for this is our COVID-19 crisis as well right now, if you want to look at it. There's so much churn which happened in the economy itself, and that literally always translates to the law firm market, the lawyer market, how much legal services is required. Then that further creates a direct relationship with how lawyers are recruited, which again creates a direct relationship of how the students are going to be recruited that particular year. So it's hand in hand with the economy. So you, as a student, I would definitely advise that you keep abreast of all of these, activities which are going on, because I'm not here to give you a very straitjacket, because there's no straitjacket formula. If you're looking at a straitjacket formula with respect to how you get recruited in a law firm per se, unless for instance, you're like a top 5 NLU, even they've had various complications with respect to recruitment this year. I mean, given the fact of COVID-19 and just there being such a freeze in hiring. So of course things are picking up, but the key word over here which you have to look at is market economics, because when you are entering into the legal services industry, you're surrendering yourself to market economics. You're not looking at it, it's not a government job where you have, a fixed way of going up the ladder, or you are going to get paid, you are going to have work in a specific format. It's not anything, it's not even working within a MNC, which is, for instance, you get promoted at whatever levels and they have a fixed recruitment formula. The law firms don't work like that. It's more of a professional based retained industry, and it works complete hand in hand, and it's completely susceptible. You're completely susceptible and willingly surrendering yourself to market economics. So for instance, like there's no straitjacket formula with respect to how to get recruited within a law firm. There is similarly, whether you're even if you're working if you're asking my experience, even if you're working in a law firm, you have work come your desk. Every single day is a different day, and one day you will be trying to find work as well. So again, if not at the time of recruitment, definitely during your tenure in the law firm, you are surrendering yourself once again to market economics. And it's so you have to be aware of that fact first going in. Yes, you read about the salary, you read about X and X person getting whatever component with respect to, whichever law firm they got recruited in, or whichever NLUs place their students in, etc. law firms. So, I mean, beyond that, that is just the garb which is right in front of you. You have to look beyond that. Now, coming back to my experience, now I am not from a national law school and I wasn't from a tier one law college, so to say. But that doesn't really mean that so the legal industry so far, I mean, at least with respect to tier ones, even if I was fortunate enough to get a tier one shot, that was primarily because of my internships there. And so, like I said, like if you're sitting here wondering whether what exactly do you have to put in your CV to get into a law firm, I mean, if you're that's not really the way to go about it, because let me be very clear in saying that there are these firms, they somehow, just because of the sheer amount of law students coming in, with the sheer stark number of law colleges which have come and emerged, the reality is that 500 etc applications are come in before even lunchtime every single day at law firms. Okay, I'm again not going to call names, but 500 to 700 get called in every single day before lunch. So do you really, I mean, there has to be a realistic perspective of what you think the HR is going to be screening and not screening, because it's just not possible or viable to screen that many CVs. That said, I am always, and especially if you're not from a tier one law school, because number one, I'm being very, very specific here with respect to who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the absolute upper echelon tier one law firms. Okay, I'm not talking about tier twos, because there is great and ample opportunity even amongst other law firms. It's not just tier one and nothing else. If you go with that mindset, I wouldn't really recommend it. Other, but if you want to ask specifically with respect to a tier one law firm, this is the reality. It gets about 500 to 700 applications roundabout every single day before, round before lunchtime. Now, what happens here is for anybody from a non-premium law school. I mean, again, I'm just giving names here. I don't quote me on that. Just what is not coming within the top 5, let's say. You have to get in there somehow to showcase your skill and talent. So how you have to structure is it your internships. So in your internships, because you're no longer an external commodity to the enterprise, you are now within the enterprise. So you are going to be walking within their walls, etc. You're going to be interacting with the associates and partners who work there. So there, the stage is set for you to shine. Essentially, the opportunity is limitless. If you want to take an internship very seriously, and I would highly recommend doing that, you should showcase, that is what worked for me. Now coming back to the more personal question which was directed to me, this is what worked for me. So being there, being accountable, taking work and showing initiative, not just taking the work, but rather making sure that you execute the work and are always there, like, available, and that intent to, that in energy, because nobody is really expecting the moon out of you as an intern. All right, so what you have going for you is your own positive energy and your own positive vibes, which you can create over there. And so that also is not a 100% straitjacket formula, because it's highly susceptible to who you're working for, the team you're working with. Like I said, business economics, it all comes down to just surrendering to a certain number of unknown factors, and you cannot get caught up in them. You cannot get frustrated if things go your way, but what you have to do is try your best. And by trying your best, that also means that you have to showcase a certain amount of agency over your work and your work product. In addition, to because I see interns, what they do is they essentially crib after working after like hours, 6 7 o'clock or something like that. It's not about the hours you're sitting there, it's about what you're getting done. And it's not just about what you're getting done, it's about essentially showing onus over that, like that you are interested and that you care. If you run away at like 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock and just leave the associate hanging with the deliverable, that just showcases that they won't be able to trust you. And then after that, you say that you have done X and X number of internships in a law firm. You've done 10 internships or 12 internships or 14 internships. That really doesn't matter. If it depends on how much quality you're adding in each and every internship, how much how interested you are. Because if the associate or partner, whosoever has given you the work, they start trusting you, there's a certain reliability which is placed on you, so they would want to have you again. At least they'll call you back for another internship. And that's how it goes. All right, so it's a relationship which you make. Because one day in this industry, if you intend to be a private practitioner, it is all about the relationships as well, which you are fostering and what you do. And that doesn't mean that, yeah, I'm chilling with him, or I know this person, so that's why it's going to work in my favor. No, a person comes to a lawyer to get a job done. If that person cannot execute that job, essentially you're of no use to that person. All right. So similarly, that associate and intern in that very microcosm relationship, if you want to expand that, if that associate can rely on you, he will rely on you. He will undoubtedly rely on you. Going off on a tangent, would I trust, even if, for instance, if I had, I mean, like if one of my brothers had was convicted for murder, do you think I would stand in his case? I wouldn't. I would go for a competent lawyer, and I wouldn't even give it to a relative. I would give it to somebody who can get the job done. So there's a fine balance of what you presume is you networking and knowing everyone. Because if you know everyone, that still doesn't matter. If you can't get the work done, that's 50% of the job. Eventually they're not going to give you that offer, or you're going to lose that particular client, whatever you're handling that situation. Point B is, you can't be that stark with your approach as well, that it's just work. You have to understand that you have to bring the relationships, you have to cater to relationships, and you have to live and die with them at some time or the other, whether it be with respect to you getting recruited for your job, or whether it be with respect to you, even one day, let's say you even become a partner of a law firm and you're bringing in work. So what do you think the partner is doing? I mean, they're dependent on, again, market economics. They're dependent on a lot of unknown variables, which is knowing people, a person having the work, a lot of things. So my point to this is that there is no straitjacket formula. So if you come with the notion that there is one, I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but that may not be the case. And of course, some of you who have like connections in the industry, I for one really didn't really have any connections in the industry. Nobody in my family or even extended families from the legal fraternity. So unless you have like inroads, or if you have personal connections, sure, by all means, definitely use them. Any help you can get is a definite boon in this industry. But to all of you who do not, never get bogged down by that fact as well. But always do remember and keep a realistic outlook that sometimes it just comes down to business economics. Sometimes it comes down to external factors which are not between, or not, or which are out of your control. All you can do is do the absolute very best with what you have. So ensure that you get a platform going forward. Now, be the, given that being the situation, I mean, there are certain external anomalies which also come, like with respect to COVID, and I mean, nobody really anticipated something like this. And there are a lot of people who are just forget about they're doing things to retain clients, forget about lawyers. So there's a lot of scary things which are happening in the market. Fortunately, we're going back towards the positive track again, but just to help anybody who's really pushing for an internship in a corporate firm and is not getting one, or is pushing for placement in a corporate firm and not getting one. I actually graduated at the time where the economy was fairly decent, and I still got rejected at 70 plus law firms. So honestly, if you had to list it out, so there's really, it's about what you want to do as well. If you are interested in it, definitely go for it. Definitely try, but do not get too bogged down by the result and keep pushing on regardless of what is happening. All right, because sometime or the other, this industry requires a lot of patience capital. Give it 10 years, give it, I always say that you really can't even look at yourself as an attorney properly before giving at least 10 years of hard work in whatever you're doing, and getting that kind of, then you start looking to the next level. So at this initial start, I know a lot of you are like setting out, just trying to decide on what you want to pursue, whether it be a law firm or a corporate law, or a in-house role, or litigation, or whether you want to prepare for civils or whatever be the case. But this is the perspective which I can only help you from the corporate law standpoint, that this is again there's no straitjacket formula. So there are certain things which you can do definitely, is like highlight always in your CVs and your cover letters, try to highlight your skills and market your skills in a way. Even if you're bad at academics, that doesn't matter. Showcase your work experience, showcase your intent, showcase your internships. If you're really good and excelling in academics, definitely show that as your strong point. So again, like I said, there's no straitjacket formula. You're marketing to your strengths, and you have to and try your best to reduce your weaknesses as well, but at least acknowledge them. So yeah, definitely. Uh,
Yeah, right. Sir, you just mentioned about the exposing your skills, marketing your skills in your resume so that the recruiters or the HR can have a look at it and may shortlist you. So, what exactly, according to you, are the skills which need to be there for the students who want to pursue or who want to join a law firm?
See, number one, I would definitely suggest whosoever has any corporate law firm experience with respect to internships, I would definitely highlight the internships and not just leave it as a one-liner, like I interned with this, and give a grandiose name of the partner, or like a senior counsel you worked with, or whosoever you worked with. Talk about exactly the kind of work you did there. Okay, be very specific. This
Right.
again ties up to my point with respect to taking your internships very seriously. If you're taking your internships very seriously, you will have a lot to write about because of the practical knowledge which you've gained. So I would definitely, what I always structure, like my academic work was not as great. I mean, compared to like Khushbu or somebody like Khushbu in our batch. I mean, it wasn't that. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't, uh, that up to mark. It was fine, but it wasn't like my exceptional quality. My exceptional quality was with respect to the number of internships which I had and the kind of work I did there. And I almost, by the time I reached final year, I would definitely suggest that I was ready to take on certain roles as an associate as well within my final year as well, just because of the sheer number of internships that I did. And the kind of, and it's not just quantity, it's quality. So be very specific with whatever
Quality.
you're writing on your CV and the kind of the work experience which you've had, the matter, what you did, the role, and what you even understood from it. And, market in that kind of a fashion. There's always a trick for it. Yeah.
Right.
So,
So apart from internships, which you have mentioned, what are the other qualities or what are the other extracurricular activities which can be highlighted and which act as a boon? For example, if we talk about litigation, then participating in moot court competitions or debate competitions highlights your communication skill, your confidence, and everything. So, for a law firm or someone who wants to pursue or opt it as a career, how important are the extracurricular activities?
yeah, again, so that's a really good point. Now, I was personally, with respect to my initial response, I was talking about my own experience, which was because my strength was the internships and the kind of experience I had. That to say, for everyone, law school is different. Some people are more interested in the mooting route, some people are interested in the academic route, whatever be the case. So, definitely, mooting is taken as a big pro. It was even used as a negative against me in one of the interviews because I did not have that much mooting experience as I should have in 5 years.
Okay.
But it was never really a point, like I was more interested in transactions. So it was never that much of a big interest for me. For litigation, definitely, I would suggest highlighting your mooting experience. It definitely helps. And you should definitely showcase it in your CV somewhere, where it is like clearly visible, and make sure that if you're proud of that particular accomplishment, that it's seen throughout the document. And initial also, in addition to that, your academic performances, if all of you are very good with the pointers, definitely move your CGPA up. Additionally, also your own initiative with respect to writing articles. Definitely. I know some people
Right.
who have written like when GST came around. So I know one law school intern. She took her internships very seriously and also wrote a very interesting piece about a GST law point, which was later the subject matter of of research in a marquee tax law firm. And they reached out to this intern just because like there was an article published with
Right.
her name trying to get insight. So of course, whatever works for you. So if you really put in the effort and you want to showcase that, go for it and highlight it and structure it in that particular format. There is no specific way, there is no straitjacket formula. It's flexible, and you have to showcase who you are and what you've done and what you've proudly done on that CV in the best way to market yourself. It's a marketing tactic, simply as it says, when corporate firms are trying to recruit you. Yeah.
So in the corporate firm or in the law firms particularly, we have different categories. We have different departments. For example, we have someone who's in the hardcore litigation department. Then you have someone who is in the compliance or other factors, other departments. So can you just highlight students about these various departments and what is the job profile like? How do they differentiate from each other?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, and yes, let's move. That I can definitely. I want to touch upon this as well, because how initially people start as well in law school is sometimes they form a love for a particular subject. Let's say it's IPR, and they go for like I want to be an IP attorney. I want to only do IP internships. That was one of that was me, and also in a way. I ended up doing more than 6 or 7 just intellectual property internships at marquee hubs, IP hubs. Eventually, once you get one or two on your CV, you start getting calls much more easier. So, so so again, now coming back to what a corporate law firm is, in back to my initial point. So essentially there are three kinds of clusters in corporate when it comes to corporate work. One is transactional, second is disputes, and a third is, you may call it advisory. I mean, but that's largely overlap both on the transactional side and the dispute side. So these are three primary functions which you have to understand and acknowledge when you are entering into a any law firm. So now with respect to transactions, now that's a wider breadth of a lot of a lot of niche practices which have opened up with respect to that. For instance, there could be just general corporate M&A joint ventures. They could be PPPs. I mean, there's a projects practice, so which primarily deal with the public-private partnerships or large-scale infrastructure projects. There's a project finance practice which deals with just financing of these projects. Then, tax, intellectual property, you name the facet of law. Usually, there's a department of it. If there is any, if there are corporates who actively need that kind of work. So, as a student, definitely, I would suggest that initially in your initial internships, if if you're hardcore about, like, let's say you want to do litigation and only litigation, then you have to, after doing a couple of initial internships in trial courts or like under uh, any a senior advocate, let's say. After that, if you want to go to a corporate law firm, then you have to identify the kind of disputes that corporate law firm as well it undertakes. So usually full service law firms has teams with respect to disputes within itself as well. Now they could be civil. There's not that much criminal. Some of them, there's a lot of white collar crime, if you're looking at into that, which is a niche into criminal, not hardcore criminal. Then of course there's civil litigation. There's IP litigation. There's tax litigation. So again, the dispute of the counter, and similarly, the counterpart on the transactional side is there as well. So, for instance, you have your general corporate teams, you have your project dispute team, you have your projects teams, you have your taxation teams, you have your IP teams on the transactional side as well. So now, what you have to understand when you're going into a law firm is that the more internships, let's say, if you want to special, because law firms these days give very, very specialized and niche practice in a lot of these fields. So let's say like competition, for instance. So the more internships you have, for instance, or the more articles you've written, or the more moots you've done in that particular space, you can essentially draft your CV and your resume in a way that makes you very marketable to these teams going forward. Because when these teams are looking for freshers, let's say a person has done 5 competition law internships, or 2 or 3, or whatever be the case, they would obviously give some level of preference to that candidate over somebody who's new to competition or has not done competition law. So so definitely in law school, it's a chance to explore. I for instance, I started with IP and I ended up doing something completely, well, not completely, but far more expansive in a way. So I ended up in real estate. I've done projects. I'm now doing general corporate in a way, and with a mixture of some projects. So and this was, and back in law school, all I wanted to get into was a tier 1 law firm. So essentially, I marketed my CV in such a way that I did 6 intellectual property internships, so that I definitely get recruited into an intellectual property team. So now, by rotation and by own transfers, because once you're in the industry, essentially there's a lot more wiggle room to move around. All right, but at least when making
Right.
the transition from law school to the law firm, I would definitely advise all of you all, if you can make your CV very, very specific in a role, that would be very beneficial. I mean, for instance, there is this one person I know who only did oil and gas related works, and was also part of UPS, the University of Petroleum and Energy and Studies, and primarily only worked with the energy offshore, offtake and arrangements, or oil and gas contracts, which is a very niche role, but ended up getting into one of the tier 1 practices in the country with respect to that. So if you find your passion early on, it becomes very helpful. If you have international commercial arbitrations on your, if you have a hunger for that, there are only very niche teams which have a sustainable amount of work who doing that, and they also have an equally niche number of candidates who they can evaluate. Right. So the more exposure you have and the more interest you have
Right.
shown in a particular area, that always adds and augments your resume as you're going forward. So I would definitely, you know, uh, I would recommend that you all make your CVs or try to get experience, fine, definitely look around, but at least after the initial years, in your third, fourth, fifth year, fourth and fifth year, definitely you should be very, very specific if you want to, land a job, or in a like a corporate law firm, and you want to be taken seriously, because they're going to look at all of that. All of that is looked at when you're on that interview table and they see your resume, because what you've done essentially shows how you've utilized the most important resource you have, which is your time. So the more time you spend, the more they'll be take you more
Right.
seriously. So it's simple. It's not really rocket science what I'm trying to say here. I mean, it's very simple. And yeah, most of you probably already knows a bit of this what I'm sharing, but of course, I wish to bring to you a little bit more insight of having been in the industry. And yeah,
Yes, sir. Uh, so as you just quoted that if you are sure or if you are keen enough to join in a particular area, or if you are interested in a particular area, it becomes easy for you to decide what you have to do. But the question is that a lot of students don't even know that which area interests them. They are blank on it. And then they end up asking people ki okay fine, ab mujhe kya karna chahiye. So what is the answer to them?
yeah, dekho, that is something which is not even got to do with law in a way. That's something which anybody in any stream for a very long period of time could feel. I mean, I know attorneys who are also in after fourth year of practicing or fifth year of practicing are still trying to expand their horizons, or transition to something else. Every day is a separate day. So for that, of course, I definitely, like I said, I started out with saying that I wanted to be an IP attorney, but I eventually realized that's not what my calling was, and I didn't want to do that. And I eventually kept wiggling and finding my way separately. But that said, if I speak now to those people who are very specifically want to get into a corporate law firm and have essentially worked around this, worked towards it for 4 or 5 years. For these people, I definitely say that, follow my approach with respect to making a very specific CV. All right. For all of everybody else who are still trying to find out what you want. Now, unfortunately, on the corporate side, like I said, it works on demand supply economics, right? So for every moment you are not spending on that specialization, there's another person who is, and that other person will get recognized.
Right.
So because it's just, I mean, if you're especially vying for a tier 1 job, like how many tier 1 jobs essentially come out there? I mean, I don't know how many x number of lakh students graduate a year with an LLB degree, and they're probably vying for about less than 200 jobs, right? So essentially, I mean, the margin for error on that, I cannot lie to you, it's not much. All right, it's, you have to a certain extent, be realistic as well, especially if you're in your fourth and fifth year. That said, every day is a perfect
Right.
time to explore, apply everywhere. I was at a zone. I wanted to keep interning even after I had finished law school, quite frankly, because I was still getting a lot of opportunities, and I still, I still want, because I just developed that much of interest, and I didn't want to limit myself. Then I got my IP call, but I really wanted to, uh, expand and
Explore
keep
more.
explore more, just like everybody else. But
Yeah.
that's the thing. So there's just, there's x number of hours you have in a day, and if you are devoting so much time to get into a corporate law firm, you have to pretty much do your work accordingly in that space, until of course you can always branch out and keep looking for more opportunities. That's on you. But what I counter I recommend to you is, if you don't know what you want, and given that there's no fixed time, it's not like in a month you're going to figure out what you're going to want, right? So
Right.
it's best again to do as many internships as possible. All right, at least by simple elimination, even if you can't figure out what you want to do, you'll at least figure out what you don't want to do, and you can constantly keep
Yes.
minimizing the list, because you won't be
Trying.
able to do that. Exactly, trying is the only solution for that, because you won't be able to minimize that list ever in your life. If you've never tried it, it'll always become that unknown factor, right? Is that, oh, if I tried this, I might have liked it. I, like, for instance, I never did competition. I probably look at it now, maybe if I had the chance, I could have, but it's limited now. I can never move towards to competition unless I go as a fresher or something like that. So you have to, like I said, from the initial part of this conversation, it's geared along the lines of business economics, and you have to go with certain trends from time to time, and what the market wants and what you're good at also, right? If you were a horrible tax attorney but you're still interested in it, nobody's going to come to you. But if you're a fantastic corporate attorney, but if you're a fantastic corporate attorney who's really hates the subject or hates doing that, you'll still have a number of clients, and you'll continue to hate what you're doing.
Right.
So that level, that fine
Right.
balancing, fine tuning, don't worry, don't ever fret. This is a patience capital game. You have to put in, like, even after 10 years, you don't know. There are new situations which will constantly come. And that's the fun about this profession. It's also the most frustratingly agonizing thing about this profession, but it's also the one thing which makes it tremendously fun and rewarding. So yeah, definitely don't stress.
Yes.
Just keep trying, keep writing, keep applying for internships and exploring as many opportunities as you can.
So on that note, for all the participants who are still questioning and putting those questions in the comment section, asking me what are the qualities, how is the first generation lawyer can get into a good firm and things like that. So I'll just repeat it for you again, what sir has said up till now, that you need to have a good CV in order to get in a good firm first. And that CV can be highlighted by the help of your internships, your past internships, the kind of work you have done, your extra co-curricular activities, how many moot courts you have participated into, how many writings have you done, and all those academics, for instance, and everything which highlight your skills, highlight your plus points. It's something which you need to highlight in your CV in order to get into a good firm. All right. Now moving ahead. So apart from that, there is one more question which I can see in the comment section, which says about non-NLU students particularly, that how can we in this competitive market today uh, stand ourselves out, and how can we get into those firms if we do not have a source, because there is a notion, there is a perception in the mind of the students that either these firms take NLU students, or we need a source to get into it. So how true is that?
So, of course, there is a certain amount of bias with respect to national law university students. That may be very clear. Of course, I mean, but that said, it's there also for a reason. They have accomplished something with respect to, clearing an entrance exam and performing well in their respective curriculums. So that's there. So they have always, they have, it's not in detriment. But that said, you cannot, being from a national law, a non-national law school myself, you can't just take that as well, right? Because that's one, for instance, you gave that entrance exam what, when you were 17, 18 years old, 19 years old, or something like that. Do you think you'll let it define you for the
Right.
rest of your career? No, you'll find a lot of notable practitioners and people who are really interested in the subject, who, if you are, trust me, you will find a way. For the legal market is wide enough for you to showcase your skills. So it's a patience capital game. All right. So if you are not from a national law school, that may be sure if you don't get, like, the tier one absolute, posh jobs initially, because they recruit people based on their fourth year itself. They get their PPOs in the fourth year. So essentially, by the time you are in your fifth year, and if you've not really been placed, you can't even compete, because they've already gotten their jobs, right? So that's how it always plays, because, like I said, they have something on their resume which is far, it's a big embellishment, right? and they've gotten it, so they're obviously going to utilize it, and people are going to recognize it. That said, you can, if you constantly do a consistently, like, consistently work good in the specific area of your choice of, for instance, of what you're interested in, there are tier two practices. I mean, tier two law firms. Tier ones are not the end of it. What do you think happens after 1 year or 2 year of 2 years of working? Do you think you're always going to be branded? Nobody even asks about your law school anymore. People ask about the kind of work that you do. All right. So be heartened with respect to that fact as well. And it's more is important to find your niche, find your what you actually want to do. I mean, do you even want? I mean, if you are really interested in be working in a corporate law firm amongst the deals or amongst high value disputes, and but there's a lot of work which comes to it. And trust me, by the year 5 or something, half of our industry is kind of just burnt out and they've quit. If you believe it or not, there are not that many people who continue in law firms. It's a tough life if you don't enjoy what you're doing. All right, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're going to have a terrible time, because you'll be working weekends, you'll be working late into the night, you can't clock out happily at 5, you can get an email on Sunday and you have to be ready. I mean, so I mean, are you ready for something like that? And secondly, if you think that them being from a national law school later on, it really doesn't really matter, because see, end of the day, again, one thing which I explained at the start is you're not going to go to a crappy lawyer. It's about somebody who can get the job done. Right. At the end of the day, a client does not care which national law school you're from, as long as you can get their job done. So for the experience, there are a lot of other law firms as well, smaller law firms. If you want to intern and you can actually showcase your skills and you can get a lot more experience there. I, for one, worked in a tier one law firm and left and went to a smaller law firm, primarily because the kind of exposure which I got there. And I've essentially gone back into a tier one now after getting a lot more, better exposure, because in tier one law firms, you can essentially get lost, because it's a complete forest. It can be overwhelming and you will be a very small part of something which is very big. You won't even know what you're doing, because it's going to be structured in a way that you'll probably have just, you'll just get like, just proofread this, or just make sure this is fine. You won't even know the genesis or the crux of what exactly the material issue is. I mean, not saying that universally, there may be instances like that, but team which is leaner, which doesn't have 20 plus people in one team, if it's just 2 or 3 people, the kind of exposure you get and the kind of experience you get much quicker, it's far more beneficial. So it's better to be a student of the game rather than running after the tier 1 badge. It doesn't matter. The tier 1 badge doesn't matter. They will come calling for you once you get the good experience and you're doing good work. I can guarantee they will come calling for you, because the industry is very small with respect to the
Right.
niche work that you do. I mean, if you want to pull up right now, like after like you get 4 years or 5 years of experience under your belt, if that's what you really want to do, the tier ones will call you. I mean, you'll get any law firm you'll want. You'll have your choice. In fact, it'll be difficult for you. You'll have so many calls. Sometimes you'll be split between decisions with multiple places. But this time, the hard time, the initial years of an attorney, the formative years, as I like to call them, they have to be taken very seriously and very diligently. And you need to, wherever you get in, whether it's litigation, whether it's corporate, or, whatever opportunity, even if it's at a tier 2 law firm, or, tier 3 law firm, or any law firm for that matter, if you do good work, you will get recognized. If you put up with it, sometimes it can get very difficult, it can be very taxing. You might not have a very good team, and
Right.
but at least it's essential that you yourself know and are aware of the kind of exposure you're getting, and you master everything as fast as possible, so that when the next time the calls come, they won't even look at your law school. Trust me. If you have it, because your resume, they won't have just your academic accomplishment and the moots. They'll have, significant deals you've been on, or significant litigations that you worked on. So set forth. And Yeah, definitely. And of course, I do want to give a caveat that if you are interested in litigation practice, though, the competition is very, very stark because 99% of our industry essentially litigates. So just to, again, demand supply economics, you're going to be in for a lot of competition as well because people, I mean, it's cutthroat at every second, every minute. It's cutthroat, and people use their resources who have resources as well. But that does not mean that you won't have a niche once you get good at what you do.
Right. So, so this conversation took me back to our backstage conversation,
Hmm.
wherein you said that we have these hunters in the market who keep on hunting for good people.
Yeah. So
So,
essentially,
what matters is that,
hmm. Yeah, yeah. As you said, there are
so yeah,
like you'll get recognized. People will reach out to you. People will reach out to you once you are doing a certain amount of like niche work. Because once there's a demand for that, people who have that kind of experience will get that call first. So yes, of course, you may be operating at a
right.
disadvantage initially, but you can always work and equalize it.
Yes. So, what's important for the law students is that they try and gain knowledge, as much knowledge as they can in the initial few years, so that that knowledge can make them stand out in this competitive markets. And the hunters who are looking for someone in particular fields can, have a look at you and can take you in their team. So at that point of time, your law school will probably not be a disadvantage for you, but your knowledge and experience on particular matters will act as an advantages for you. Am I right?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. And moving ahead, sir, you also pointed out towards litigation. So that was probably the next question I wanted to put forth. That what is the difference between a person who's actually litigating from a law chamber or something like that, who's having his own practice, and someone who is in the litigation department of a firm?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and I definitely would, if you ask me or ask anybody who is very wants to take litigation very seriously, if I for one am not that interested and was not that interested in litigation, I like it. It's very interesting, and but it's not for me. So, but for a lot of people who really love litigation, I would definitely recommend going into a good chamber under a good practicing lawyer. And by that I mean, don't go to a senior advocate as well. That looks good on the resume, but I would definitely go for somebody who is, in their marquee years as a, it's very in the profession where they have a lot of drafting work, a lot of filing work, and they have a lot of appearances as well, rather than going to a straight away either a corporate law firm which may be doing a lot of high net worth matters, which would be briefing a senior counsel, and or rather than working for a senior counsel who is just, essentially who's just taking briefs and is no longer in the midst of drafting or filing. So I would definitely look for and advise everybody to, if who wants to take litigation as a career. And trust me, litigation as a career is the most rewarding, but it is the most difficult uh, stream you can possibly choose. And the kind of experience you can get in it, you will get nowhere else. But the fact is that if you're taking it very seriously and if you're ready for the grind, which is a very long haul, I mean, I'm
Right.
saying that if you're just thinking about doing it for 2 years and thinking it's not for me, then I wouldn't really recommend taking it. And obviously there are exit opportunities. Then you can probably just go in house if you want money, or if you can try for a corporate law firm for in the litigation practice, again, which will be paid well, but then essentially you won't be getting that same kind of exposure. Some teams definitely do, even within corporate firms as well. They operate like very highly functional chambers and they pay well as well. Definitely those teams, the more you research, the more you'll find out. I really haven't researched that much, but I know for a fact that they do exist. Additionally, I would, but to be on the safe side, I would always choose a briefing counsel with a lot of matters. Maybe not looking at the money aspect for a few years at least. And you know pushing from that perspective, because again, corporate firms, again, when they recruit like senior associates, let's say, they sometimes recruit people who are who have that kind of experience, because with the briefing council, you can sometimes you will be looking at like 4 to 5 matters in a day, whereas in a corporate law firm, I don't know what the kind of practice, but you might be in a situation where you're just doing high net worth arbitrations, and you might essentially be part of a larger team and not getting that much onus independently to carry out a lot of work. So from my I mean, at least from a litigation perspective, I would definitely recommend working under a good senior who I mean a good senior who does not, not a senior advocate designation, a good attorney in their prime years, let's say about like 10 to 15 years of practice, who has a lot of work and is still, in the midst of drafting. So I would definitely look for something like that.
And so also students have this question in mind that does doing your post graduation helps you in getting a good firm? And apart from that, does it make any difference if you do it from India or you do it from abroad?
Now, see, like I said, like I mean, going back to business economics, I mean, given this COVID-19 crisis as well, there are a lot of people with foreign university degrees who are struggling to get jobs right now. Right.
Right,
So the thing is, LLM is not mandatory. It's a good plus point to have. Right. Again, so it's a great plus point, especially if you've gone and done a foreign LLM in a specific area. And then in that specific area, you're looking for a job in that area itself, not like, just a very general LLM or something like that, which doesn't really show intent. uh,
right,
Recruiters do see, I mean, law firms as well, they look at they definitely, it's a big plus point to have. It's a plus point, but it's no guarantee. Like I said, it's not a mandatory
right,
requirement to have an LLM, and there are barely any qualification. I mean, law firms or corporate houses, whichever be the case, are who are looking for an LLM in the resume. It's a great plus point, but it's never
right,
really a deciding. I mean, they're not really looking coming out saying that, oh, we have to recruit a guy with an LLM. Right. So that's
right,
never really the intent behind the hiring process. That said, if you've done one, that it's definitely going to be a plus point, especially in that specific, practice area. For instance, if you've done IP or you've done something in international taxation, or whether it's cross-border transactions or something, or LLM is of
right.
a niche area, or like or a dispute resolution, international commercial arbitrations of the sort.
Yes,
So yes, definitely. Additionally, from doing a domestic LLM as well, like I said, it's a plus point. It's not a mandatory requirement. Sometimes, maybe for certain government jobs, etc., I do definitely see sometimes there's an LLM on the empanelment requirements or something like that. But it's always it's more of a, it embellishes your CV and it showcases that this is the particular area which you want to get into. Though I would definitely recommend that if you're going to pursue an LLM, especially a foreign LLM, do so at least after gaining a good amount of work experience. Do it after 3 to 4 years of work experience, because then you actually know it's otherwise it's just going to be, I mean, barring if you have a scholarship, it's just a huge waste of money essentially. Because I mean,
right,
if you're going to do it straight after graduation and then you come out with 6 years of legal education and you still don't know what you want to do, so it's
right,
better, because at the end of the day, if you want to be working and you don't want to get into the academic side of things, and if you don't want to go into like competitive exams for judiciary or government jobs or something like that, if you want to litigate or be a part of a corporate law firm, be a part of the business economics in a way, there is I would definitely feel that you should gain 2 to 3 years of experience, 4 years, even any kind of work experience, and for a significant number of years, so that you at least know what you don't want to do, and you go and pursue the LLM which will help amplify your knowledge in a specific area. Now let's say if you're working in taxation, and then you're doing only transfer pricing or international taxation issues. If you go and do a master's in that particular field, of course, recruiters will definitely take you far more seriously, and it's a huge feather in your cap. Whereas
Right.
if if you're doing it straight off as a fresher, after coming doing it after as a fresher and then coming back to India, it may not reap the same results. Also, if you want to get recruited abroad, it will always bode you well if you can carried out some work experience in India, because or a work experience anywhere in the world for that matter, because that definitely helps in getting a better law college for your masters, especially if you want to go to some place like the States, where where experience is like taken and considered quite highly. And B, when you land there and you are doing your masters there, if you want to be if you have opportunities, you can probably you have just a higher chance. I'm not saying it's a done deal, and especially in the COVID crisis and all of that, but definitely it gives you a better platform if you have some work ex and then you land there to getting a job over there itself, if that is the goal. If you do, and you want to surrender yourself completely to a separate jurisdiction and work on work there rather than here. Whereas if you're looking at just the Indian market, it's always never a man, at least in the litigation sphere and the corporate law firm practice, it's always a plus point and not a requirement. So
Right.
yes.
Yes, sir. And I mean, you have answered all the questions so beautifully, and even the audience is very happy with the this response we are getting in the chat box. I just want you to conclude by telling us what are the major pros and cons associated with working in a law firm.
Pros and cons.
Yes.
Pros, of course. If you like what you do, because the thing is, working in a law firm, it keeps you aware and it keeps you very mentally sharp and agile, because
Okay.
you will be abreast with all the latest developments. It's
Hmm.
actually that way. It's a bit better and it's a bit more easier access than law school. For instance, like all the updates, or the firm, the library, the knowledge repositories. If you're very interested in your subject, of course. Otherwise, another pro, of course, is the money. Money is a great takeaway from for a lot of people as well. From when and of course, and it should be always, because everybody is learning knowledge and trying to be the best, so that one day they can essentially have a successful practice of their own. At least who are targeting litigation or at least want to work in a corporate law firm. And
Right.
of course, you will get to see a lot of marquee corporates which you might not otherwise. For instance, your Fortune 500 companies of the world, and whether they be foreign companies, whether they be Indian companies, you can be because how it always works is that a corporate always goes to a law firm. They go outside their in-house when there's a complex legal situation which comes into play, or if they're going to go into bed
Right.
with another transaction with respect to another party who they don't really know about. So like for instance, when you're going to buy a house, you're definitely going to do a title diligence on the house, right? So if you're going to go to and acquire a separate company, a company will always go to a law firm and try to identify and assess all the risks. So if you're into business, and especially if you're into the market economics, and if it's an interest area of yours, you're always going to feel more uh, involved, let's say, with the economy, because and I'm not joking, because if you ever get to work in a tier 1 law firm per se, they're essentially shaping the law of the country as it goes. Every regulation which changes, every small implication, you get to see that actually moving tangibly when you're working in those enterprises. So that sometimes gives you a big kick. It's a global deal, or something which the government has made a stark amendment. For instance, even what with COVID-19, there's so many amendments in the banking and finance space, RBI amendments, SEBI regulations, MCA relaxations. So if you're interested in those kind of things, you will always, there's always a home for you. Cons, it is extremely demanding. Trust me, it is the most difficult thing you will ever pick up. And you may not have that much personal time, but of course, That also depends with respect to the kind of team and the practice you're in. You may have good time. You may that's also benefit to not working sometimes with a tier one law firm. Your weekends could be consumed, your holidays could be consumed. Sometimes, you really, even if you're really interested in the subject, you might have to keep working so hard that you get burnt out. I mean, you could be interested in anything, but you can't do it for 18 hours a day, right? I mean, even if, for instance,
Right.
anybody is like interested in like anything of the sort, like whether you Netflix, or whether you play a sport, or whether you are into gaming or anything of the sort, you can't do it for 18 hours. It becomes a job. It becomes
Right.
a task. You start burning out. So yeah,
Exactly.
those kind of things are definitely cons.
Thank you so much, sir, for being a part of this session. It was an honor to have you with us, and you have given a lot of information as we expected. So thank you, and I hope we meet soon on some other session. And it's bye bye from my side, and to all the participants, all the viewers. This was the final session for our playlist on law as a career option. You may please have a look at the other videos too. And I'll see you soon in the next video. Till then, bye bye and good evening.
Thank you.